It's election day, team. Let's get right to it. Welcome, friends, to the Buck Sexton Show. Can you feel it? Can you sense it? Can you smell it in the air? It's very eerily calm here in New York City for a day that's full of so much tension. It does feel quite a bit like this is what happens right before the storm. And when some of you are listening to this, I know you may have, depending on whether we're on delay where you listen on one of our affiliates or if you're listening on the podcast, you might already know more than I do about what has happened. But I'm telling you today about what's going on in the macro sense. What's the biggest picture we can take of the situation? And I'll tell you this much. No matter what the outcome of this election may be, and as you know, I've been very strongly positive about Trump's chances here. I've predicted a win. Not shy about saying it. I think 276 electoral college votes, something like that for Trump is what I'm seeing in my head. But prediction is a fun game because no one knows and anybody can get it wrong. But here's what we do know already. What Donald Trump has accomplished in the last 4 years has been truly astonishing. And that's true on multiple levels. Let's just first start with the track record. Let's start with things that people said he either wouldn't be able to do or wouldn't do because he was unwilling. You look at the economy, and it turns out that what many of us have believed, and this is something you can point to the data on, you can look at the numbers, what many of us have believed for a long time now, that if you have less onerous government taxation and regulation, if you let the business of the American people be business, everybody benefits. It's good for the overall economy. It means that you have better, faster, cheaper products. It means that people have more money to invest either in companies or just in themselves, in their education, and in paying down their mortgage and buying a house for the first time, whatever it may be. It's better for us. It's better for the economy. The government is not as good at spending your dollars as you are. And so there should be an absolute minimum of taxation, and there should be a bare minimum of regulation along with it, because central planning through all these different ways the government harasses and undermines businesses also harms all of us. So these are foundational philosophical concepts of conservatism, of limited, not necessarily small government these days, let's be honest, but limited government conservatism. And Trump has proven that the model was right. The Obama administration for 8 years, for which Joe Biden we know was the vice president, when he wasn't making deals on the side for a little Hunter, the Obama administration was unable to achieve the similar growth rate for GDP that you had seen from many, many other presidents. And it was really a record low recovery from a depression or from a recession, going all the way back to World War II. It turns out that having the government spend a whole lot of money and regulate people into oblivion is not useful, is not good for making people better off, but it is good if you want to be in control. It's good if you want to shore up your political base, and if you think you have some sanctified moral purpose of spreading money around to people who did not make it, give people things that do not belong to them through the state. Like Bastiat the law, people wanting to live through the plunder of every other person. And everyone thinks that they'll be better off if someone else just loses more stuff and it's given to them. And the people that are doing that rearranging use that to their advantage. That's a summary version of not just the Obama-Biden economy, but of the Democrat Party's view of the world. Okay, so on the economy, Trump was right. The numbers bear it out. Trump knew what he was doing. The tax cut was a major stimulus for everybody. It did put a lot of money in the hands of average folks. In fact, every family across the country that pays taxes, and a lot of them don't, but every family across the country that pays taxes got a tax cut. All right, you look at trade with China. This is one of the areas where we were told Trump was completely out of line, out of his mind. And now he has managed to shift that consensus. And that was a bipartisan consensus before Trump came into office. Oh, China will just get more liberal and will behave better as it becomes larger, richer, and more powerful. In retrospect, doesn't that seem really stupid to you? Doesn't that consensus that was rammed in all of our faces all the time? Oh yes, this is the way it is. The people at the think tanks and the commentariat all across cable news and the various academic experts on the issue of China trade relations, they would all say, "Oh no, China's going to come our way. Let's just make them as wealthy and influential on the global scale as possible. And then they'll behave really well. And let's ignore all the theft of intellectual property, all the cheating on trade that they are doing, and just suffer in silence." That was the consensus position because a lot of people felt like they were doing quite well with that position. And if you look and see all the different ways that China has economic influence in this country, I mean, the NBA won't criticize China for a reason, right? We all know what it is, about dollars and cents, folks. Trump took on that challenge. He defied all of the experts. Remember, Trump should listen to the experts. But he had been saying this for decades. He knew because he understands bare knuckle business negotiations. A guy who's done plenty of it himself. He knows that the Chinese Communist Party was absolutely taking us out for a ride. This was not something that we should have sat back and allowed to happen as long as it did. And I'm not even getting into all the theft of intellectual property and the other things that they've done, which are unbelievably damaging. And I think we're going to, unfortunately, look back on the days when we allowed the Chinese Communist Party to steal so much of our intellectual property as a pivot point, as a shift. We think we're going to be ahead of China, from an economic standpoint, military standpoint, for the foreseeable, right? My lifetime, your lifetime. That may not be the case. And one of the reasons is that our biggest advantage against the Chinese Communist Party and against this authoritarian state capitalist entity, it's not really communist, as you know, was our intellectual property and our innovation. Well, if they can steal all of that, guess what? What's our biggest advantage? They got a lot more people than us and far fewer regulations about the Green New Deal and, trying to make for clean energy and all this other stuff. Human rights violations, worker codes, unions, these things don't slow down the Chinese industrial machine. What we have, our advantage is our intellectual property, is the ability that we have in a mostly free market-based system for the best ideas to win and proliferate. Well, if you can steal all that, it's like the kid who's copying the smartest kid in the class's homework. You're still you're going to get an A just like the other kid. Doesn't matter if you couldn't do the work on your own. That's what's happening. Trump decided to finally push back on that. And he deserves a ton of credit because I remember in the early days, 2017, right after Trump's miraculous election and defeat of Hillary Clinton. And that's another thing. We should forever be grateful to Donald J. Trump for giving us the 4 years that he did and preventing us from being subjected to the Clinton crime family for 4 years. I mean, that alone is a tremendous service to the American people, not just to Republicans, to everybody. Hillary Clinton is a rapacious, greedy, unbelievably amoral person with a hole in her soul that will only be filled with power and money, and we all know it. Trump prevented 4 years of that, and so we should be thankful. The first 3 years of the Trump presidency were 3 of the best years I can remember in this country in my lifetime. That's the truth. And many of you will recall around this time last year, in November and December, I kept telling you, and last summer, some people even felt like I was saying it too much, but I wanted everyone to know, enjoy this, friends. Booming economy, peacetime, just nothing but options and opportunity out there all across America. So much good stuff going. Yeah, they had to pick issues. Oh my gosh, kids in cages at the border, and we were all supposed to think that Trump was Hitler and a Russian asset and all this stuff. This was all make-believe emotional garbage about Russia collusion. It was all insane, but they would pick issues and make it seem like everything else that was happening in the country was terrible. This was all a fraud. So I want us all to go into tonight knowing, first and foremost, that we should be proud of what the Trump movement accomplished so far. And I could sit here and keep going on and on. No wars. How about that? And I'm somebody who saw up close and personal what our military had to go through in Iraq and Afghanistan and had a lot of access, particularly in those two countries, to what the governments don't generally want people to know about, which is really how the sausage is being made, so to speak, behind the scenes in the intel world, how nasty, how violent, how untrustworthy so many of these different factions and groups that we either had to work with or that we were trying to pacify. We've moved away from that. Trump has not started some massive military conflagration, and he deserves a whole lot of praise for that. So you've got a booming economy, peace. You've got peace deals that he's signing, a great new trade deal with U.S., Mexico, Canada. Even Nancy Pelosi had to say, yeah, it was a good deal. People were saying, oh, he's going to touch NAFTA. He's going to ruin the economy. They didn't know anything. So remember, Trump was supposed to be the guy who did not understand policy. And on his biggest policy initiatives on the domestic front and dealing with trade internationally, he was remarkably successful. I could sit here and talk to you about the judges, three Supreme Court justices, Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, and ACB. They will put a mark on the court for decades to come, hopefully better than John Roberts, what we got from Bush. That's for sure. All the different federal judges across the judiciary, Trump appointees, and high five Mitch McConnell for getting it done there too and not backing down. We've gotten a lot in the first 4 years of the Trump presidency. And now here's part of why I feel like no matter what, we will win. What do I mean by that? I do believe Donald Trump, when I speak to you tomorrow, will be either the president for 4 more years or in the process of getting a final declaration of being the president for 4 more years. I do believe that. But even if that were to, let's say, and it's possible, if that were to not happen, the Trump movement is not going to stop. Because while he was the messenger and he was the essential vessel for all of this, we understand politics in a new way now. We have wartime conservatism spreading all throughout the land where we understand that the other side views this as zero sum. They don't want moderation. They don't want mitigation. They want power and they want to wield it. And working within our system and steeling ourselves with whatever principles and courage we can, we have to push back, fight back, and win. That's where we are. You got to win, or else you're going to be subject to the bad policies, decision-making, and statism of the other side. Trump has reminded us of that. He's reminded us of, more than anybody else, the dangers of even thinking for a moment that you should bend the knee and apologize to your enemies. They don't want your apology. They want your destruction. Why are you going to bend the knee? One of the favorite games among conservatives in the media in years past was to find other conservatives who needed to show their principle by throwing a conservative or throwing a Republican official or somebody under the bus, as kind of an offering to the, oh, I'm one of the good ones, God, right? As kind of some kind of buying off the other side so that the New York Times might say something nice about you at some point. That was the Romney-McCain conservatism of the past, or Republicanism of the past. I think it's gone forever. So we should celebrate that, or at least it's gone for the foreseeable future. And that's because of Donald Trump as well. There is now a whole new cultural movement because of Trumpism. And let's just say it, I haven't really even spoken to you about this before. Donald Trump has made the Republican Party cool. Donald Trump has allowed a whole generation of younger voters, younger people out there to understand that we are pushing back against the hive mind. We are pushing back against the Borg, against this wokeism and this completely absolutist demand of the left that there can be only one view on any issue, and that's the way it has to be. And you're not even allowed to dissent, never mind get your way. We have funnier memes. We have more joyful and safe and respectful political rallies. There's a whole political culture out there because of Donald Trump. It's changed, and it's one that's for the better. So, yes, there are people I could start to point to as the hopes of the party for the future. I mean, I know people will talk about, Josh Hawley. I know people will bring up, Ted Cruz has still got a whole new chapter left here. I mean, there's a lot of folks in the Republican Party who understand how we can actually fight and win because of Donald Trump. So remember that tonight as we go forward. I am confident, but I'm also a realist. But no matter what happens, in the end, I know the Trump movement will continue because it's not finished. I recently got a crash course in home title theft, and you better pray this crime never happens to you. Here's how it works. The bad guys find your home's title online because it's in the cloud, it's stored on servers, and then they use a quitclaim deed to kick you off, put themselves on, and take out loans against the equity in your home. You often won't find out about this until you receive the payment notices in the mail or perhaps even a foreclosure notice. Take action today to protect yourself. Create a virtual barrier around your home's title with Home Title Lock. Just go to HomeTitleLock.com. Use the promo code RADIO for 30 free days of protection. You can also check online to see if you're a victim of this crime and don't even know it. All you have to do is go to the site right now, HomeTitleLock.com. Use the promo code RADIO. You'll get 30 free days of protection, and you can check in that site to see if perhaps your home's title has already been breached, because a lot of people don't even know. HomeTitleLock.com. Promo code RADIO, 30 free days of protection. Take action today.
I mean, we're winning. We're doing this thing. And as crazy as this present moment can feel, and as much work as we have to do, I'm already tired for the work that we already have to do no matter what the outcome is. But the fact of the matter is that the momentum is on our side, and that we're winning, and that we've won the generational argument, and that millennials are radicalized, and Gen Z is out here with class consciousness. And really, I truly believe that we're winning this, and I'm so incredibly excited.
So that's the view from the other side. Millennials are radicalized. Yes, I know that liberals tend to win with younger people. Why is that? We should always ask that question. Why is it liberals do so well with 25-year-olds who don't know very much about life, who don't know very much about how things really work? Maybe that's because liberalism appeals to that part of the brain where things feel good and would be nice if those things were true, but is not anchored in the experience and wisdom and knowledge of living life. AOC, in a sense, is a walking embodiment of that ignorance. She's somebody who mouths all the slogans you'd expect of a young Marxist who has managed to build herself up using all the institutions that are dominated by the left, as we know, whether it's academia, the media, and her ideas are going to be the ones that we are fighting against in the future. They're bad ideas. They do not work. They do not work in other countries. They will not work here. But the threat is very real that if the Democrats do say take this White House and also take the Senate, they will try to enact some of this. Now, the good news, and I like to give you as much of the good news as possible today, because I know people are on edge, and I know there's a little sense out there right now that it feels like we might wake up in a very different country. We might wake up with a soon-to-be very different governing philosophy from the elites, but one of the great holdovers, one of the great continuations that we have from the Trump presidency is that the elites have been exposed. They've been shown to be wanting in so many ways. And I think you're talking about a generation that's radicalized. I think there are now many generations, not even just younger people, but a whole bunch of folks out there across America that because of Trump, when they're told, do this because I say so, and here's my title, or here's my degree, a lot of Americans now more than ever will say, why?
We could have a prolonged period where we don't have a legitimate transfer of power for the first time in our history. And I believe the stress out of that, the economic dislocation and the violence of that could be just terrible. So I'm praying that doesn't happen. But I think that we have to realize that given the extreme nature of this president, given the fact that he has no bottom, it's very clear. As I said the other night, Al Gore, when he lost in a very close, ultimately Supreme Court decided vote, he took a bullet for the country. Donald Trump will put a bullet into the country. And if you don't think that's true, then you haven't been paying attention the last 4 years.
I mean, here's one of the great overrated, underwhelming pseudo-intellectuals of the last 30 years, Tom Friedman of the New York Times, a guy who happened to be in the right place at the right time at one point in his career for a lot of things going on in the Middle East, and then from a policy perspective was stunningly wrong about the Middle East reliably for about the last 20 years. And he's somebody who the liberal readership of the New York Times would treat as though he was gospel on these issues. Just wrong on so much. And wrong on Trump. Notice this, Trump has no bottom. What basis do they have for that? What is the horrific unconstitutional action that President Trump in these 4 years has taken? What is it that he's done exactly? And whenever I say this, I'll get some muttering and some sputtering about good people on both sides or, rapists and murderers coming across the border. So I said, either comments taken out of context that led to no action, and in both of those cases, for example, are just completely misrepresented. I mean, they're straight up lying about the Charlottesville. That's a lie. They're lying about the Charlottesville comments. They have been all along. That's no bottom for a president? Really? What is the thing that he's done? I love asking liberals this question because they look at me like I'm crazy, and then they start saying things that sound like it comes out of the Joe Biden gibberish book of what is that? What does that even mean? What is the horrible thing Trump's done? His tweets? That's the reason we're supposed to be so concerned about a Trump coup because he calls out the mainstream media? One of the great victories of the Trump era is that the legacy media now, they're not done, but they're on a pathway to losing the power and influence that they've enjoyed really for the last 50 years. It's now on the way out. But if I'm on the Peacock channel or something, and if I'm on NBC or if I'm on, why are any of these places impressive? Who is it that they put before you to tell you what's going on in the country that you should listen to? You have a lot of options now. You have endless options, actually, from whom to get your information. Anyone really believe that they have the best, the brightest, the smartest at CBS Evening News, where Dan Rather, that clown, was the top of the masthead for how many years? Where it's CNN, Anderson Cooper, and Fake Tapper, and Chris Cuomo. These are the people that we're supposed to think are honest arbiters of the truth. No intelligent person who's well-informed could believe that. It's not possible. But there's a lot of brainwashing that goes on. And people don't like to feel as though they've been brainwashed, and so they'll cling to ideas even when they've been proven faulty. Trump has shown us that the mainstream media, as a general principle, the mainstream media is dishonest and fraudulent. He's shown that. Unequivocally. He's shown us this. And that's going to linger. That's going to stay. I mean, the Hunter Biden suppression is just the most recent example of this, but we've going back for years now. I mean, Russia collusion is such a farce. It was so embarrassing. I never believed it for 1 second. I was never wrong about a single aspect of it. And I'm just a guy who brings his life experience and his, reading of books and news sites to do some analysis here. I'm not a 1,000-person news gathering organization like the New York Times. How is it that I was right about all of that? And the New York Times, a $1 billion media company, or probably worth a lot less than that now, but hundreds of millions of dollars, is so wrong. How is that possible? Well, because of the massive brainwashing that goes on, and people want to be comfortable in the crowd. They want to feel like they're part of the smart, good people idea. And the moment you start to ask questions and you hold your own side accountable, that can feel uncomfortable. And if you're not used to that because you're a leftist and, you grew up in Brooklyn and you went to a, a Montessori school, and then you went to, your local public school, and then you went to, Wesleyan, and then you get a job as an assistant editor at the New York Times. You've never been confronted with ideas that you don't agree with and you don't like. And that's true. You can play that out in cities across the country, right? This would be true of somebody growing up in Chicago and Los Angeles. You're just surrounded with the echo chamber effect. You really want to believe that maybe what you've been told is, if not entirely untrue, at least often at odds with the truth, often an exaggeration. I mean, there you had Tom Friedman. This guy is, incredibly rich. I think he married a very, very wealthy woman, and, he's done well in his own right, too. And he goes around waxing philosophical about how Trump is a danger to the country. And let's all remember, friends, and, he's one of the great relics of the establishment media. You had a New York Times column when that was the absolute top of the editorial heap. It'd really be pre-internet, early days of the internet. Nothing could come close to that in terms of reach. And the power. Think about the influence these people had. There was no competition, really. Yeah, there were little rinky-dink newspapers, and there were some, upstart conservative publications, editorial publications here and there, but there was nothing that could match up in the late 90s, the early 2000s with the New York Times and the Washington Post. They're losing that grip on power now, and they have to hide their writers and the people that work for them from the public, because when we find out what they really believe, how unfair they are to Donald Trump as a general rule, how much they're a bunch of partisan activists and not really journalists, people see this and they go, wow, okay, so I really shouldn't trust them. So it's true what Donald Trump says about the fake news. The reason it stings them so much, the reason it bothers the media, and they act like, they're being marched off to prison cells every time he just makes fun of them at a rally, is because, one, they have, especially at the national TV journalism level, huge, inflated, and completely unjustified egos. And two, they really, deep down, know that they're frauds. They will never admit that, but they know what they do is fraudulent. They know that there's a fundamental dishonesty to what they're presenting to their audience every day. They're not going to talk about it at cocktail parties, but it's there and it's true. So Trump's war against the media, I'm here to tell you, as we're going into this election night, and you can check out, I'll be doing live coverage on the First TV with my friend Jesse Kelly tonight, starting at 8 o'clock. So if you don't have the First TV app, download it and check it out. We're going to have Bill O'Reilly will be joining us, Dana Lash, and we've got a great lineup and a lot that we're going to want to share with you over the course of the night. And look, team, I want you there with me. I want you, there with me, working through all this stuff. So the other part of this that I wanted to say is we have a tremendous victory in the Trump camp just by the defeat of the mainstream media's foundational, underlying faulty premise of what they do. That's never going to change. And that's something that we can build on. Now more than ever, the legacy media's grip on Americans' perceptions and imaginations is slipping. Yes, I know we've got the next battle is really going to be against big tech. And that's one we have not figured out. We have not won that one. But against the mainstream media, they're not replicating their audience. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. They're going to lose their ability to continue to dominate the narrative just because of built-in advantages, incumbency, effectively. That's why people still watch CNN, because it's been on the air, and it was on the air when there wasn't a lot else, and has a brand, and people know it. And now it's just turned into a liberal echo chamber, which makes people feel good. They just want to be told all the time that their ideas are right. And that's what Tom Friedman does in the New York Times. And so many others. I mean, he just happened to say something stupid about the president today. That's why he's in the Freedom Hut crosshair, so to speak. But yeah, you could do this with countless people. They act like we've been through some horrific 4 years. And unfortunately, because of the pandemic, this year has been bad for the country, but it's been bad for the whole world. And the way they blame Trump for this is reckless and dishonest, but it may work. It may work. At the end of the day, I think that'll be that's really what the referendum is about right now. Did people believe at the end of all this, and when we look back, did they think that Donald Trump handled this enormous challenge, the biggest challenge of his presidency by far? Did he handle this well enough or not? I think that will be the question that we look back on as the defining one of this election. I think that he did a good job, and I think that it has been very challenging. Experts have been buffoonishly wrong all along during this, and the public has just had not only their irrational fears to begin with, but the magnification of them for political reasons by the mainstream media has been just reckless. I mean, utterly reckless. You even had to have Melania come out and say recently that people need to stop saying that the vaccine can't be trusted because of Trump. That is going to cost lives. I mean, that is a really straight line you can draw between they watch CNN and they hear that you can't trust Trump's FDA to, well, I guess I'm not going to get that vaccine. And some of the people that make that choice probably will get the virus and probably will die. They don't care, though. That's just the cost. That's just the cost of politics for the left now. That doesn't matter to them at all. That is a calculation they're willing to make. Meanwhile, if you try to live your life and go about your job, if you're the president, hold rallies, whatever it is that you're doing, you're a COVID spreader and an immoral monster, and everyone should throw you out of office. There are so many big lies of the Biden administration, or rather the Biden campaign, which could be an administration within 24 hours, good God, or at least it will be in waiting. But the biggest one for me, I don't even know if I could say it's the biggest one, but the one that strikes me as well, there are two things. I'll say there are two things. That Joe Biden is an impressive, honorable human being who should be president. I mean, that's just laughable. But beyond that, I mean, he's just an intense mediocrity who's done exactly what he needs to do for the maximum benefit of Joe Biden, his heirs, and his associates. And then beyond that, that he has some plan, that he has some version of the future that's so remarkably better than what Trump has done so far with COVID pandemic. They always say this, and then when you listen, it's, well, what exactly is going to be the next? What's the next big move? What's the next thing that's supposed to happen here? And then it turns into more Bidenism. What was that? How exactly am I supposed to make that into a policy? Oh, I'll listen to the expert. I'll listen to the science. This is a phrase that is uttered by people who do not think for themselves. That's a phrase that you should recognize right away. This is a canned political slogan. This doesn't mean anything. What experts? On what issue? How? What's the implementation of this? You know, this would be like someone saying, I'm going to become a better student. Okay, how? I'm going to study more. All right, well, how much more? What subject? What makes you think that that's going to necessarily work for subjects where perhaps you're already falling behind? I mean, there's so many ways you can take this, but no, I'm just going to do more. I'm going to do more. What exactly? I haven't figured that part out yet. That's what Biden's telling you to do right now. Just trust him with that. I think a lot of Americans recognize that this is empty, this is hollow, but I'm worried. I'm worried. The media is still far more powerful than it should be. I've told you Trump's going to win. I think he's going to win, but I'm prepared for whatever happens, friends. That's if there's a central mantra, a central idea for this show, it's that we understand who we are. Freedom Hut, conservatives, Team Buck, the right, whatever, however you want to designate it. We know who we are. We know what we stand for, and we will never, ever stop fighting because the fight is what it's all about.
And last night, Trump said he was going to fire Dr. Fauci. Isn't that wonderful? I got a better idea. Elect me and I'm going to hire Dr. Fauci. And we're going to fire Donald Trump.
Biden's just a depressing, going for the most depressing anti-Trump figure he can find. And so Fauci, I guess, will have to do. What has been Fauci's great point of leadership during this pandemic? Other than the stuff in the beginning where he was just flatly, insanely wrong, right? And he's supposed to know this stuff. You know, if somebody sat down with me and said, hey, Buck, how do you do a radio show? You would think, given how many thousands, tens of thousands of hours probably now, or at least thousands of hours of radio I've done, that I'd have some ideas. Fauci's done this for 40 years. And really, what did it all come down to? I don't know. We're going to have to, maybe just stay home forever, wash your hands. The mitigation works better if you stay away from human beings, maybe 12, maybe 18 months, who knows? Because the virus, you got to do more. This guy, it's just all bureaucrat crap from this guy. It's nothing. And they hold him up like he's some great hero. No, he's the James Comey of the moment. James Comey is a dishonest, slimy weirdo. No question about that now. But James Comey, when he was useful as a battering ram against Donald Trump, was, and I remember this, was held up by the media as like a great hero of the federal government, the ultimate G-man, the ultimate FBI guy. This guy is a lawyer with a tremendous self-regard and an unbelievable sanctimoniousness. And it's so funny to watch how now, he's still out there and he's on his book tour and he's rich and he's, traveling around. But they just used him as long as he was useful, and now no one cares. Now they realize this guy's just a lanky weirdo. And with Fauci, it's the same thing. They do this over and over again. Anybody who works in the government that you're told is some great hero, from the media's standpoint, it's always because that person is politically useful to them at that point in time. Because otherwise, you're saying there's somebody great in the Trump administration. Shouldn't Trump get credit for that? Wouldn't that make it seem like a bit of a lie to constantly tell everybody how inept, chaotic? Remember all the talk about the chaos in the White House? That was a narrative that ran for a year or two. Chaos in the White House. No, the White House is fine, actually. That was all a lie.